Hello, Loving Without Boundaries community. I am super excited to be here for another Facebook Live with Coach B and myself, Katie Shambliss. And if you're new to our community, we just want to say welcome. We're glad that you found a safe place that you can call home, where you can get your questions answered if you are coloring outside of the lines of heteronormative monogamy. We are glad that you are here. If you've been with our community for a long time, we love having you here, creating that safe space for other people. We started this community, this Facebook community, back in August of 2015. I can't believe how time flies like that, but we are glad to be here. So with that, I just want to welcome B here, and she's bringing an important topic up for us to discuss: breaking the cycle of the inner critic, because that is something that can still be coming in definitely when we're talking about multiple relationships. We can get into the comparison game. Why am I not enough? That they want to have another partner. There's lots of ways that the inner critic can show up in consensual non-monogamy. And we're delighted to have a conversation about what this is, what you can do about it, and how being part of this community can help. So with that, B, thanks for being here. Good to see you.
Yeah,
And I'd love for you to kick us off.
yeah, absolutely. So today, as Kiri shared, we're going to talk about those inner critical voices, which I would say that probably most of us have to certain degrees, one or another part of our life. So what I've noticed and why I brought this topic here, because it appears to be a really widespread stress response in the human condition. And what it is actually a fight response. If you are familiar with the fight, flee, and freeze response, this is the fight response turned inwards towards the self. So basically, this is a form of self-aggression. When we are in this particular mode, then we are operating from a contracted self, which means that in these states, we start getting into smaller and smaller version of ourselves, where we are defining ourselves by our failures, mistakes, and weaknesses, and we assign self-blame and self-shame to ourselves. When we have this self-critical state and we start really spiraling down, another aspect of it can be a sense of isolation from the human experience and from our support network. For example, certain thoughts and beliefs might pop up that I'm the only one experiencing this, I'm alone, no one cares, no one can help me. So as Kiri, you said, there can be really widespread manifestations of the self-critical voices in consensual non-monogamous relationships, where the complexities can be ongoing, and regularly we might be exposed to new experiences where we need to grow, we need to adapt, and sometimes we can feel like an exposed nerve. And if we add the self-critical voices to this, we can really diminish our life experience, including our relationship experiences. Why these self-critical patterns appear can vary from person to person, from situation to situation. It can come, for example, internalizing societal norms. So we might have grown up in an environment when this was the norm, that, okay, this is how I treat myself, that I keep beating myself up. This is how I'm supposed to look at myself. So it can become the internal voice coming from the society, or it can become an internalized voice coming from other people, for example, our peers or our parents. So it can become a voice of our mother or father or even our teacher. And without explicit targeted work, we may not even realize that we have these inner voices, and these are actually the voices of other people from the past. When it comes to looking at the timeline, then the critical voices can move or can have the direction towards the past, the present, and the future. For example, a past-related inner critical voice might say to us, or might keep us trapped in that loop of I shouldn't have done that. I made a huge mistake, and we might attach really disempowering beliefs to that. I'm really a failure here. And we might live with constant resentment and self-loathing toward ourselves because these critical voices keep being repeating in our heads. When it comes to the present moment, they can also show up in any particular situation, or they can be oriented towards the future when we are likely to see our past mistakes or shortcomings as something that are implications to how the future is going to turn out. For example, forget it, it's not going to happen. Don't even go for that particular goal. Don't even reach out to that person. Don't even consider dating that person. Why would it happen for you? Just remember the past. So all in all, we can have actually many critical voices popping up in our head. As I said, these can be the voices of other people, and targeted work can help us uncover these voices. I also wanted to mention a few misconceptions and underlying beliefs that can perpetuate us being stuck in the self-critical cycle. One misconceptions that I came across is that if we keep beating ourselves up, then it's a source of motivation. It's a way of achieving our goals. And why it can really work if I keep criticizing myself, like how can be such a failure? How can be so weak? You gotta be stronger. We can indeed achieve certain goals, but there are consequences to this. If this is going on long term, we're gonna keep our threat system online. As I mentioned, the self-critical voice is self-aggression. It's a fight response, which means that we're going to keep pumping stress hormones into our body. And the long-term consequences, our emotional well-being might be deteriorating, plus our health can go down because of this constant chronic stress response that we are living in. There are some other underlying beliefs that can lengthen the cycle of the self-critic. For example, that there are many. I just wanted to mention a few. The all or nothing thinking, for example. So we see ourselves in polarities and other people's as polarities, like I'm either a complete failure or I'm either a complete success. And that can be true in the relationship sphere as well. So we don't leave any room for mistakes. We don't leave any room for healthy growth experiences. Or for example, the personalization can be another pattern. When I assign 100% blame to outcomes, even when there are completely unrelated events contributing to the situation. For example, I assign 100% blame to myself because of someone else's emotional response. I am 100% to blame. Or this project is going down and I'm 100% to blame. So with this, we really contract in ourselves and we fail to see other possibilities and other contributing factors why certain events turn out the way they turned out. Or we can revert back to mind reading, detecting threats in all sorts of situations, people's body language, tone of voice, and this can be especially coming up really often in consensual non-monogamous relationships when we not try consciously, but there's this unconscious pattern that people constantly have negative opinion of me, they constantly compare me, they constantly judge and criticize me. So with this, we prime ourselves to threat detection, and we're really gonna have a really small focused life, focusing on what's not working, what's not there. So basically running this self-defeating pattern for ourselves. With all this, when it comes to relationship context, when we're in this contract itself, with the threat system going on and on and on, we are most likely to be focused on our pain. And the first goal is going to be to achieve safety. So it's going to be a get safe response. When we're in this particular state, connecting with other people, connecting with our partners, having those expansive, joyful experiences in our relationship is going to be really, really difficult. So living from a place of the self-critical voices, it's really a contraction and the disconnect, isolation, and it's likely to cause ruptures in our relationships. To further
Mhm.
or what might be some manifestation of the self-critical voices. Kitty, you mentioned comparisons. And indeed, if we keep comparing ourselves to other people, that can amplify and perpetuate the feelings of insecurity and jealousy, which can grow into really, really big problems in consensual non-monogamous relationships, where we are constantly exposed to adapt to new situations. So yeah, this can be especially challenging in this really complex lifestyle when we're not able to move through or move beyond these critical voices. So sometimes, as I said, it's part of being human to a certain degree. But what matters is it popping up maybe for 2 seconds, and I can regulate myself and I can create a different response, or is this a place where I live from possibly 20 hours out of 24 hours a day? And when this happens, when I'm unable to move beyond this particular pattern, then our communication, which is such an integral part of consensual non-monogamous relationships, is going to be affected in a really negative way. So if we criticize ourselves, if we keep beating ourselves up, if we assign self-shame and self-blame, then we're likely going to have beliefs that I'm unlovable, there's something inherently wrong with me, I don't deserve better, which means that in our communications, it's likely that we're going to have difficulties communicating our needs, boundaries, and overall staying in the dialogue. And what I mean by staying in the dialogue, that instead of a place of connection and being on the field of understanding with others, coming from a place of transparency, openness, expansion, loving kindness, we likely revert back to these get safe patterns and possibly become reactive in our communications as well. For example, communicating through blame, judgments, or passive aggressiveness. Anything that is coming up for you, Kitty, that you would like to mention?
I love you're doing a beautiful, beautiful job of explaining this, and I really appreciate two things in general that you've focused on, which is that it can cause us. We get to choose where to focus our attention, and we may start to focus on pain, which creates that need to get safe. And one thing I want to bring up, especially when we're talking about consensual non-monogamy, is this can show up when we're talking about being in multiple relationships. It can also show up when we're talking about coming out to other people, like letting them know that we identify as polyamorous or we're in a consensually non-monogamous dynamic. If maybe a coming out didn't go well, we could start to think, well, I don't want to come out to anybody because everyone's going to judge me, so that could cause that idea of not feeling safe. And some of that may be perceived or almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and some of it could be real. So it's important to learn how to be able to think rationally, kind of collect data, and to remember what we can control and what we can't control, right? Like, we can control ourselves and our own reactions and the way we show up in relationships. We can't control how other people are going to react. So that can add to a sense of, there's a TED talk by a colleague of mine named Chris Strathopoulos, and he talks about how to build trust. And some of building trust is to feel psychologically safe. And when we don't feel psychologically safe, it's from a fear of judgment, or a fear of judgment and criticism, or a fear of being punished. And so some of this can be perceived, and some of it could be real. So it's really important to understand the difference, because if we do come out to other people and we maybe feel like we have been isolated from them because of our choices, because of how we're choosing to live our lives, that can be really incredibly painful. And that's also partly why we created this Loving Without Boundaries community. And it's important to find your own emotional support network and people who get you, who understand you, who have your back, because it's important to know that that is critical to your own fulfillment. That's critical to your own success, to you getting your needs met, your needs to feel connected, to have a sense of belonging, a sense of connection. Those are real human needs that it's important to realize. If those aren't getting met, say over here, and you've done everything that you can to positively influence that, well, then maybe you've got to find some other people over here where you do feel more seen, more respected, more understood. So I think it's important to make that distinction, that there are perceived threats, or maybe it is partly our inner critic, and then also noticing when we're maybe in an environment that isn't being supportive, and be able to peel apart the difference between the two. That's a skill that can be learned. That's a little tricky, especially when we're talking about polyamory and consensual non-monogamy, or if we're coloring outside the lines, like if you're in the LGBTQ plus community, so that you do find the support that you need. So I just thought I would throw that in there. It came up as you were talking, and I noticed that even in my own life, like noticing where I might not feel safe in this environment, but to go find a sense of safety over here, and also to not start writing that story like you were talking about, be like, no one understands me, nobody gets me, I'm so isolated and alone. That's why it's really important to reach out and get that support. So thanks for bringing up this topic, but that's what came up for me, B. So thanks for the conversation.
Yeah, I love that, what you shared, and I would love to expand on that. And it was an amazing distinction to make, that there's this inner threat and perceived threat and the real threat. And it's important to find our own tribe. And it indeed can take some skill and really learning about ourselves as well. What is my need? Where are my boundaries? So that we can really choose our own people. And this can show up, this lack of skill set sometimes can show up as staying in codependent relationships, or sometimes even staying with real toxicity, or even tolerating abuse, because these self-critical voices can grow into such a degree that I really don't deserve, that I really don't believe that I deserve better, or I'm so not in touch with my needs and where my boundaries are, that I'm just saying that, okay, I need this other person to complete me, whatever the price is going to be. So I also love what you mentioned about that sense of safety and safeness, because yeah, it's really part of the human experience that we are evaluating each other constantly, and sometimes with a negative undertone. So how we can become our best friends if we really invest in ourselves, put in the work to create that inner sense of safeness, that safeness in the mind, the safeness in the body, that no matter if we are being judged, criticized, or not accepted, we are okay inside. We might be more like the bamboo in the wind, that we might be blown or a little bit tilted in one direction, but we don't break. We get back to the starting point. We are center. Like the world is flashing red around us, or the people and relationship, and we are flashing green. And that is a skill set. Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. That can be learned. So we really can find the compatible people for ourselves, the compatible tribe. And it all starts based on my personal experience and what I've seen in other people as well, starting to identify who we are, what is it that we need, and give ourselves grace as well throughout this process.
Mhm. Beautiful. I totally couldn't agree with that more. And so, yeah, thanks for bringing this topic up. And what we'd like to stress here is that, as we said, these skills can be learned. We can be taught them, and it can be important sometimes to find who is the right mentor or coach or third party or self-help books or whatever it is that resonates with you, so that you can start to live your best life now, not weeks from now, not months from now, but to start to get those skills now. So you can learn how to identify if there are either self-sabotaging or self-critical patterns, creating that awareness and that consciousness and going into what we call the observer mode is so incredibly important. That is also a skill that can be learned, as well as giving yourself some self-compassion and some grace, and to also remember your fellow human being too. Like, we're all on a journey here together. None of us are perfect, right? Perfectionism is a myth. So understanding that we all make mistakes, we all fall down, that is part of the human process. The resilience that you're building is when you keep picking yourself up and getting back up again, building that grit. That's where it really counts. and you can learn to create different and more productive and constructive responses when you are faced with challenges in your life. And you also can work on like changing the way your thought process is, like noticing that you are a work in progress, just like all of us are. We are all like sculptures where we're sculpting ourselves in a way. Or you can think of, you're almost reparenting yourself if you grew up in a possibly challenging environment, the way a lot of us have, let's face it. You can start to create those ways to turn that story around, that narrative around, and also to get the skills and build the positive mindset that you need to build the courage and the resilience that it takes to be coloring outside of the lines of heteronormative monogamy. Because let's face it, that can be challenging. It's like you're swimming upstream when everyone else is tend to be swimming downstream, where it's a little bit easier. So let's really look at that for what it is. Anything you wanted to add there, B, before maybe we start to wrap up our talk?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Kiri, that these sometimes and sadly self-defeating patterns, they won't go away on their own. I can definitely attest to that. I tried for decades to rely on the next person, the next shiny thing, the next environment, the next job to take my pain away, to take these patterns away. And yeah, for brief periods of time, I felt like, okay, this is great. There was some distraction going on. The underlying patterns didn't go away. And sometimes we really need to look at ourselves with radical honesty to become compassionate detectives in ourselves, and to discover what is going on inside us, giving ourselves grace that we are not defective in any way. We simply respond as normal human beings in the human condition, and sometimes raise our hands that, hey, I need some guidance here, I need some expert help here. So I love this saying that an abundant life starts with an abundant mind. So it's absolutely possible to achieve our goals, whether it comes to career goals or relationship goals, to achieve these from positive emotional states instead of fear-based states, or coming from the self-critic and motivating ourselves to self-shaming and self-blaming. So imagine a life where instead of beating yourself up, you experience a sense of your own capabilities, tenacity, feeling resource, that you notice your progress, you experience life with joy, expansion, and contentment. It's all achievable. And sometimes, yes, sometimes that expert help is needed, which is, if I raise my hand, that's definitely a sign of courage, which I did 2.5 years ago. And one of the best decisions of my life that was.
It was for me as well, be having you here as part of the team, as a friend, as a colleague, as a champion for our community, as well as our deeply cherished clients, has just been an absolute joy. And we're really lucky to have you. So with that, I would just like to end on a chat about hope. That hope is there. So we don't want this to feel all doom and gloom. As B said, it takes courage to raise your hand and ask for help. So if what we're talking about resonates with you, if you are looking to build your skill set, your positive mindset, even when you are coloring outside the lines of heteronormative monogamy, which takes courage, which takes resilience, and you want to have a chat about what that journey could look like, then I invite you to book a call, which is exactly what B did a little over 2.5 years ago, at lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. That will take you right into my calendar. You just simply pick a time that shows up that works with you. And there'll be a brief form for you to fill out just to give me some context for our conversation. And then we'll jump on that call. We'll put our heads together. We'll have an authentic, real conversation to see what is alive for you. What are you struggling with? And I'll be doing the work to see, can I help you? Can our team help you? And if we believe we can, we'll craft a plan right then and there about what that looks like and how to get started. So if that's you, again, I encourage you to book a call at lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. No matter what you decide to do, know that we are glad that you are here in our community, getting the support, the love, the sense of safety, and a sense of belonging. that you need so that you never have to feel alone again. And it's okay to raise your hand sometimes and ask for help. That is a sign of your own bravery and your desire to be the best version of you. So, with that, I just want to say thank you, B, for the conversation. Anything you want to add before we sign off?
Yes, I can encourage anyone to embrace that we don't have to suffer. We can absolutely compress time and we can absolutely put our stake in the ground and to say that not one more day. I'm embracing a different life from now on. I create life on my own terms. It's achievable, it's possible, and please know that you all deserve to live your best and most authentic lives.
Mm. Awesome, B. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in and listening, or if you're watching the recording, we're also delighted to have you here. And with that, again, thank you for the beautiful topic, B. And until next time, we'll talk to you soon.